I want to talk about laziness. We went to Guatemala. We went now to see the Kachia tribe, and they don't have any government help either. These guys, whatever, in fact, most of them work. There's some factories there, and whatever they do, but they earn $200 a month. They're barely making ends meet, real tough. But one thing they're not lazy, man. I mean, these little kids are out there working. They work really hard. And then I come out here and there's laziness everywhere. You go to a church and you've got these 30, 40-year-old guys that don't work. Did they not read the scriptures and know that Paul worked and he was also a missionary? So, I feel like the church accepts laziness. And so I want to share two scriptures on laziness to show that laziness is actually wickedness.
Yeah.
So laziness is a sin. In fact, Paul said that if a man didn't work, he shouldn't eat. Basically, we shouldn't be feeding a man who's refusing to work. And so Proverbs 19 NLT version says that lazy people sleep soundly, but idleness leaves them hungry. So they're hungry because they're lazy. If you went to work, you'd probably have some money to go buy yourself some food. And we watched some documentaries on homelessness, and I know not all homeless are like this. One guy was standing or outside the parking lot of a car dealership, and he was begging for money. The owner didn't want the homeless guy to be there, so the owner offered him a job to wash cars. And he offered the guy, hey, you know what? Instead of being out there begging for money, why don't you come work for me? You can wash some of the cars. I'll pay you $10 an hour. The homeless man laughed at him, saying, I make more money than that begging for money. So refused to work. So from that, let's go over to Matthew chapter 25. This is Jesus speaking, and he gave one guy 10 coins, he gave another guy 5, and he gave one guy 1. And so the guy that the master gave 1 coin to didn't do anything about it. He actually dug a hole and hid it. So verse 24, the man who had received 1 bag of gold came and said, Master, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. Now we're talking about someone in the church, and they're doing absolutely nothing. And they know that God works because God's working all the time. Verse 26, his master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. So in Proverbs, we read that laziness leads to poverty. And here the master's calling this man wicked because he's lazy. He says, you knew that I harvested where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. So he's like, you know that I'm a hard worker. Why don't you be like me? Verse 27, well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. My point here is just that laziness is wickedness, and wickedness is sin. And wicked people do not inherit the kingdom of heaven.
We can be lazy at home as husbands, we can work. And then I know some wives do work, some wives don't, but as husbands, we're supposed to be leaders. It doesn't mean you have to be working every second, but if there's stuff to be done, do it. If there's dishes, do it. If the toilet's dirty, your wife's probably working hard, clean it. Take the garbage out. We should be working as leaders. Jesus said, the one among you who wants to be your leader needs to serve. Yes. So let's remember that as husbands and men, we can't lead from the couch.
That's right. 1 Timothy 5:8, Paul is teaching young Timothy to be a worker. He says, NLT version, 1 Timothy 5:8, but those who won't care, other translation says those who won't provide for their relatives, especially those of his own household, have denied the true faith. Such people are worse than unbelievers. The NIV version says, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, especially those of their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than unbelievers. Does not provide. They're lazy. They don't want to go to work. Laziness, if I looked it up, it means refusing to work. I know there's times where we're tired and we just want to lay around. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about refusing to work. Everywhere you look, you see help wanted signs, and you got these 30, 40-year-old guys that want to be in the church but don't want to work. They want to serve. They want to go on missionary trips, but they don't have jobs.
That should be a huge red flag for anybody that's in the church building. That's a so-called leader of any kind that is living that kind of life. It should be a red flag, as if it's someone that people are looking up to. Why is he doing that? You have to ask yourself the question.
Exactly.